Episode 19 of BLEACH's 1000-Year Blood War arc anime has just dropped, and it was yet again another incredible installment of the new anime series, which somehow continues to build upon the source material, giving us one incredible episode after the other. Episode 19, titled The White Haze, covers a lot of manga material, from sections that were not adapted in earlier episodes, including Ichigo leaving the royal palace, the execution of Kangdu in BG9, as well as the highlight of the episode being Rukia's incredible battle against the fearsome Asnod. This episode has several amazing moments to look forward to, including the return of Byakuya onto the battlefield, as well as the main attraction, which is the absolutely beautiful Bankai reveal of Rukia Kuchiki. Like I'd mentioned earlier, episode 19 adapts material from all over the place, with material from chapters 554 to 555 being used to adapt the Ichigo leaving the royal palace scenes, which take place before the intro song. Then at the beginning of the episode, we get a combination of manga material from chapters 559 to 565, which adapts Kangdu and BG9's execution, which is condensed down within the anime. And lastly, we have a linear stretch of material from chapters 566 to 570, which is adapted into the remainder of the episode. So in total, we have approximately 6.5 to 7 chapters worth of manga material adapted into this week's episode. In addition to this, we have all new anime exclusive material via some incredible visuals of 2 new nightmare scenes involving Rukia when Asnod is explaining the concept of fear to her and when she succumbs to fear herself. So definitely be sure to stick around until the end of the video, where I will be breaking down my thoughts on these new scenes, including how Rukia's Bankai was adapted into anime form. So without further delay, here are my thoughts on the all new episode of the BLEACH 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. With so much manga material that has been adapted into episode 19, it is understandable that the pacing for this week's episode is nothing short of fast. We cut from one scene to the next, with unnecessary comedic panels from the manga being cut, as well as panels including redundant reactions, and lines also being cut in order to streamline all of the manga content that has been frankly crammed into this week's episode. We begin with a scene before the intro song, which is centered around Ichigo leaving the royal palace and then his phone call with Urahara, where he updates him on his progress. In the manga, this occurs before Bambietta activates her holy form and challenges Shinji and Komamura. In the anime, on the other hand, I like how this scene has been rearranged in order to occur after Renji's battle against Mask, because remember, Ichibei tells Ichigo that 3 hours have already passed since the Quincy had begun their attack. If you follow the pacing of the manga, then it is hard to believe that 3 hours have passed, since we have only seen Kangdu and BG9's big fights occur. But the anime includes Bambietta and Mask's fights into those 3 hours, which definitely makes the passage of time a bit more believable in my opinion. It also adds further impact to the end of the scene when Ichigo comments on how Urahara didn't speak about how things are going on, which means that he doesn't have anything good to say at the moment. We know this from last week when we had found out that the Shinigami's forces have been reduced to 30%. This gives Ichigo a sense of urgency as he breaks the sound barrier and rushes as fast as he can to make it back to the Serite in time. After the intro song, we cut to Hashward and Uryu continuing their conversation from last week's episode. This scene serves to streamline Kangdu and BG9's execution, and instead of Yuhobak accompanying Hashward, we have Uryu witness the execution in the anime instead. This scene continues the trend from previous episodes, with Hashward maintaining a neutral tone with Uryu, in comparison to the manga where he was very hostile towards him. Material from chapters 559 and 565 are combined here, which results in Kangdu and BG9 having no dialogue during their execution in the anime, in comparison to the manga where BG9 had begged for his life and Kangdu had taunted Hashward. Unfortunately, all of this is omitted, which I really feel conflicted about because I liked these scenes within the manga, especially seeing BG9 express fear over his own death, and Kangdu challenging the Sternritter Grandmaster. After this, Hashward speaks to Uryu about the nature of Yuhobak. I really like this change in the anime. There is an air of intrigue and mystery as we learn learn about how Yhwach shares his powers with others, how he grows stronger after those who he has given his powers to die, emphasizing that fighting is Yhwach's means of survival. This is in contrast to Yhwach continually stating that he hates conflict. The episode begins on a really strong note as we wrap up plot lines from earlier episodes before we cut to the main event of episode 19, which of course is Rukia's battle against Asnod. The main portion of this week's episode adapts 4.5 chapters worth of manga material, while adding 2 anime-only scenes. The first occurs as Asnod explains to Rukia how relief is linked to life and fear is linked to death. The second scene takes place when Rukia succumbs to fear, as the anime depicts this with some disturbing imagery which is reminiscent of Byakuya experiencing fear from Core 1. With the decomposing faces and flies crawling all over Rukia's body, it's an excellent touch which lives up to the terrifying shrift ability of Asnod. The first scene where Asnod explains the nature of fear to Rukia showcases some strange imagery of the black oozing fear crawling all over Rukia's body. There is a lot of revealing shots of Rukia's body here, which I'm sure pleased fans who were disappointed with her peach scene being removed from Core 1. Largely, the battle against Asnod is very well paced, and it faithfully adapts the material from the manga, elevating it with these stunning visuals, incredible voice acting, and amazing soundtrack. The highlight for this week's episode was seeing Rukia's Bankai activation, as the anime does so much justice to the manga material here. They really put all of their effort into making Rukia's Bankai look absolutely beautiful, while also demonstrating how incredibly overpowered her Bankai is following the large-scale blast that erupts, which washes over the battlefield and completely freezes the oversized, deformed Asnod. Speaking of Asnod, he really stole the show, especially with how his backstory was incorporated into the episode, as we learn about his desire to be free from pain, and how he is afraid of dying and going to hell. We then see Yhwach having saved him from a life of pain when he had bestowed power upon him by giving him the letter F as his shrift. The episode did a fantastic job of highlighting how Asnod was in fact so afraid and scared that he was simply projecting his own fears onto others. The voice actor of Asnod repeatedly saying "I'm scared," combined with Byakuya's speech to Rukia about how if she holds no fear within herself, she will be able to see that it is Asnod who is scared and afraid himself. The theme of fear, the story of Asnod, and the downfall of his character all poetically culminates into the blindingly beautiful Bankai transformation, which shines through after Rukia finally feels the warm embrace of acceptance from her older brother. It is truly incredible writing which had left me feeling tearful, with the emotional conclusion to the story of Rukia and Byakuya's bond, which had started out so dysfunctional back when Byakuya had not spoken to Rukia for over 40 years after she had joined the Kuchiki family. Now, after so much has happened, Rukia is finally acknowledged by Byakuya, who helps her to not be afraid. He encourages her by stating how strong she has become, and lastly, he witnesses her accomplish a massive milestone with the release of her very own Bankai, which he describes as magnificent. The episode wraps up with a post-credit scene involving Yachiru and Isane as they tend to the wounded Shinigami, with Yachiru revealing that she has been stealing the bedding from the Quincy so that the wounded Shinigami can be treated on them. They are then ambushed by the Sternritter Guana Lee as we begin the next major Sternritter battle, which will undoubtedly take the center stage of episode 20 next week. The post-credit scene adapts material from the second half of chapter 570 as we nicely wrap up the adapted material all the way up until the final page of the chapter, where the Sternritter introduces himself as Sternritter V the Vanishing Point to Isane and Yachiru. So moving on to the animation, I feel that this episode was a really special case. It wasn't necessarily as explosive as episode 18, with Wakabayashi showing off why he's an absolute legend, nor was it as conservative as episode 15, but rather it's an episode that understands what needs to move and what doesn't. In a sense, I'd like to say that it is filled with intention. During scenes which require a lot of movement, it does the animation really well, but when it doesn't, it relies on its masterfully crafted storyboard and great direction to put its point across, and as a result, it turns the episode into a really intentional piece that prioritizes multiple different things at different times. When it needs to move, like when Rukia was needing to dodge Asnod's fear spikes, the animation is very snappy and dynamic, with Rukia skillfully weaving through the spikes which are continuously being fired towards her. Another really nice cut was when a fear-stricken Rukia tried to lunge at Asnod, which is an animation cut that is similar to when Byakuya had attempted to attack Asnod in Core 1. There's also Rukia's Bankai scene, which I suspect was animated by Hiroyuki Yamashita, which has some really nice lip-synced animation animation combined with some lovely visual effects for RUKIA'S ice. But where this episode truly stands out is with the direction and storyboarding, which should really come as no surprise with director Taguchi himself storyboarding a good chunk of this week's episode, and Shinji Itadaki doing a fantastic job with his contributions too. And in true Taguchi fashion, this episode has some of the most gorgeous shots in this core, with the visual highlight of the episode being the execution scene of Kangdu in BG9. The art was pristine, the characters were perfectly on model, and every scene was framed perfectly. This gave the execution a whole new feeling of dread, which I suppose is one advantage of having Kangdu in BG9 remain silent. I can definitely see the perspective of how some people would believe that the execution and storyboarding of this scene elevates how the manga depicts the execution of Kangdu in BG9. Overall, this was a lovely episode with what I would personally believe to be the best storyboarded and directed episode of Core 2, and I cannot wait to see what kind of madness that they will do in episode 20. Last week I spoke about how Kangdu in BG9's scene was not adapted into last week's episode, and I did have a lot of expectations of hopefully their characters being given a second chance within the anime, but this doesn't appear to be the case. We know that there are going to be specific Sternritter who will have all new battles in Core 2, which Kubo has specifically drawn the outlines for. He had spoken about this additional material during Jump Festa last year. Most of us assume that these will be battles involving the Bambis or even Uryu, which in all honesty I would love to see. This week's episode adapted just over 7 chapters worth of manga material, but the pacing felt perfectly fine. The only complaints I had was BG9 and Kangdu getting their lines cut, but other than that it was a very strong episode with some memorable moments. There have been rumors spreading about episode 20 titled I Am the Edge, which will be adapting 9 chapters of manga material spanning from chapters 571 to 579. Personally, I cannot wait to see what happens next week because it is one of my most highly anticipated episodes from Core 2. Each episode of this core has solidified the new direction that the anime staff are taking with the 1000-Year Blood War arc, as they are adding to the manga, making changes which expand upon the arc and overall making it feel like a new experience for both anime-only viewers and fans of the original manga. I have read the material adapted into this week's episode countless times, but I was still excited watching this week's episode like it was the first time that I was experiencing all of this material. And this can all be credited to how well Taguchi and the anime staff have adapted the manga and how Kubo's script rewrites and changes that he is making is improving upon his source material. I am fascinated to see the altered direction of Uryu's character, as the anime has really convinced me of Uryu's betrayal, and Hashuo not being suspicious of him has been a welcome change in the anime. I think that I speak for everyone when I say that a properly fleshed out Uryu vs Ichigo battle would be a welcomed addition to Core 2 and a great way to set up the major changes and additions which will be taking place in Core 3 and 4. I keep saying this, but we are going to have 35 chapters for each core, and if they are maintaining this current pace of storytelling, then it means that half of the episodes in Core 3 and 4 will feature all new never before seen material which will flesh out the 1000-Year Blood War arc. The possibilities are endless, and I have no doubt that Kubo is working on the Core 3 and 4 editions and the changes that he is going to be making as we speak. So that was episode 19, The White Haze, and I can safely say that this episode is yet again one of my favorites from Core 2. With so much chopping and changing around of material from the manga, with Kubo and the anime staff carefully steering the anime towards a new direction, I am super excited to see what next week's episode brings to the table. As always, I will be back tomorrow for my complete manga vs anime analysis video, where I will be taking a closer look into all of the cuts, changes and additions that have been made to this week's episode. So definitely be sure to look out for that, but in the meantime, continue the discussion in the comments. Did you like the Hashwad and Uryu scene? Did you enjoy Asnod's final appearance within the arc? And what did you think about RUKIA'S Bankai? I look forward to reading all of your comments, and lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for my in-depth breakdown of the new Bleach episode in my follow-up video which I will be uploading tomorrow. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.